Welcome to the BDGG guide for Sire Denathrius, presented by Wowhead. Sire is the 10th boss in the instance. The Mythic changes are as follows. Players start with 6 Burden of Sin stacks in Phase 1. Cleansing Pain slashes to anyone within 1 yard of each target hit. This deals damage, but also fractures off an additional Sin stack. Echoes of Sin must be killed within 14 seconds or they will return to the player that made them, giving them their stack back. 3 Night Hunter Beams instead of 2. 4 adds, or quote-unquote horsemen, at the beginning of Phase 2. Phase 3 Mirror Phase. Everything that knocks players in the normal phase will pull players in the mirror phase, and seeds can only be soaked by the opposite realm. Blood Price exists in Phase 3. At 100 energy, Sire casts both Massacre and Ravage in Phase 3. The third 100 energy cast fills up the room, down from Heroic, which is 5. For comps, a Disc Priest is essentially required for Blood Price. Holy Paladin is good here as well. Any DPS DK you can slot will bring you huge value, and Vengeance DH is extremely strong here, not only from a defensive point of view, but also for positioning. In total, we recommend 2 tanks, 4 healers, and 14 DPS. Boss positioning on this fight is complex in Phase 2 and 3, but it's the same as Heroic in Phase 1. For the first half of Phase 2, the boss will need to be moved around the room to make sure that the proper targets are debuffed by racking pain, while otherwise positioning for proper Hands of Destruction, and maximizing cleave from the horseman onto the boss for damage. For the second half of Phase 2, the boss will always be tanked on a catalyst to again maximize cleave damage. In Phase 3, the boss is going to be tanked in a variety of positions, but in general will just be where the previous seed set was soaked by melee and tanks, with the exception of being when it's time to bait Ravages, and those positions will be covered later on. The first phase of Sire is largely handled the same way that it is on Heroic, by pulling Sire out to a close wall and having his Cleansing Pain spawn fairly grouped up adds. Unlike Heroic, Cleansing Pain now cleaves, so raiders will want to stand 1 yard apart, unless they are trying to cleave. Most raiders will survive this intermission with 3 stacks. We recommend coming up with individual assignments for each person that somewhat minimizes the damage taken from Blood Price, prioritizing later groups in the first Cleansing Pain. In general, slightly swaying from your assigned order should not cause any major issues, but try and stick to it as best you can. Ravages just require movement. You can see that we gate the first one here just to maximize damage. This phase will initially be a tight DPS check until you get it down, and lusting on pull for progression's sake is a great idea until you are sure you can make the 70% check. This can be moved later. Night Hunters need to be moved into position fast. There is no set positioning for them, targeted players just want to make sure their lines are drawn across the raid as fast as possible. Any lines that do not go through the raid frequently end up being undersoaked. Soaking 2 lines will kill almost anyone other than tanks, so players should take care they are only in a single line. Raid cooldowns for each set can also be set up ahead of time, such that there is some active raid cooldown for each Cleansing Pain and ad set. Be sure to rely on 2-minute cooldowns first, like AMZ, because they will be back up for the end of this phase and you can get 2 uses in. The boss is pulled towards the center of the room to make the run for the second Ravage shorter. If his HP is under 77%, you should stop DPS until the ads spawn. If your raid feels comfortable killing a slightly larger amount of ads, it can be worth it to get all of the stacks removed from a druid, as they will be able to roar right before the intermission knockback, greatly increasing everyone's move speed towards the center. Around now, if the boss's HP is under 74%, you should again stop DPS until more ads spawn. Around the 6th set of ads is when you're going to want to start thinking about pushing the boss. We do want to delay a little bit so that cooldowns, in particular melee cooldowns, are back up when they need them. Push timing is generally around when the Ravage cast is supposed to go off. As soon as you see him teleport, this is when you'll use all soul shapes and other movement speeds in preparation for the intermission. A lot of movement speeds, such as Blessing of Freedom, will last partway into the slow. No changes in the intermission, just make sure to keep comms clear so that players that need help can call out for it. This mainly includes grips and freedoms. The first part of Phase 2 will be killing the 4 horsemen. DPS should be split into ranged and melee groups, with ranged groups attacking Sincere first, and the melee group attacking Evershade. The melee group will need a fresh gateway to get over. Killing these on time is a huge DPS check, and tanks should get both Sire and Remoria over to Evershade as soon as they can so that Racking Pain can hit Evershade. Every shade will spawn 2 adds, one at 66% and one at 33%. These adds will attempt to cast 5 times and then despawn. The second Racking Pain should hit Gloomveil. This is a bit of a skill shot as it needs to be done from the main platform adjacent to her and not directly on her platform. This has to be done on this particular platform so that the raid will get gripped by Hand of Destruction to the proper position. After getting gripped, the raid will proceed through the mirror. Note that a Warlock needs to get another gate down before going through the mirror, this time for the range to Gloomveil. At this point it is time to kill the second set of horsemen. Melee team should go to Dusk Hollow, along with the boss. Just throw any ranged ability at him and he will grip you, such as Death Coil, Judgment, Heroic Throw, to name a few. And range need to wait for the Hand of Destruction to explode before going back through the mirror to take the gateway to Gloomveil. DPS cooldowns are going to matter a lot to make this DPS check. After Dusk Hollow is debuffed, Sire needs to be moved again to the south side of the room, on the May platform between the 2 horsemen being killed. He will grip everyone here. For the rest of Phase 2, the raid will stay together. The tricky part here isn't necessarily the mechanics, but finding out how to control DPS enough so that all Kabbalists die when they need to while bringing Sire down to 40% at the phase push. There are 4 sets of Kabbalists that are going to spawn, and tanks should debuff both of them with the first Racking Pain available. Impale should be handled in the same way as before, staying relatively close to the mirror, but off to the sides. Impales normally happen right after going through a mirror, so range should wait to do large movements until they know that they are not a target. For the first set, your timer to kill 2 Kabbalists is pretty lenient, so a bunch of boss damage can be done in this set. Nothing is different about Massacre on Mythic other than it does significantly more damage, making it fatal. The second and third set of Kabbalists need to be focused down unlike the first set. In fact, the timer on them is so tight that Sire needs to be moved early, basically as soon as the second set gets debuffed. There is no mirror to get from the second to third set, so the raid will need to use movement cooldowns to get there. In general, Kabbalists need to be dead well before the Hand of Destruction casts, as you risk getting people pulled into crescendos. That is especially true here, so it is better to overkill these 2 sets than try to time these out down to the second. Throughout the phase, tanks should keep Sire and Remoria stacked with Kabbalists as much as possible to maximize cleave, as every bit of damage is going to matter during progression. The 4th set is another boss damage set, and plays out similarly to the first set. Your main goal here should be getting the boss low enough to set yourself up for a good phase 3, while still killing both adds ahead of the Hand of Destruction timer. After the last hand, you will go through the mirror and DPS the boss until he pushes into phase 3. From here, your raid will split into 2 groups. The group that stays in the normal realm, and the group that goes back through the mirror into the down phase. These groups are different than horseman killing groups, but we recommend sending primarily me players down and keeping ranged players up top. Make sure your raid has a Lust in each realm, since it will not share cross realm. Since tanks are in the down phase, this group will end up taking more damage overall. The first thing you'll notice about phase 3 is that you can see the other group you are phased from. These groups need to stay separated the entire phase. While there are mechanics that need to be handled by both sides, if any 2 players in the opposite realms come in direct contact, they will instantly kill each other with Neutralize. The same mechanics happen in both phases, except while in the down realm, the knockbacks from tank combos and blood price will pull you towards Sire rather than knock you away. After the first blood price, Lust should be used here for the range and upstairs only. This is when the first set of Fatal Finesse debuffs go out, often referred to as seeds. These function similar to Heroic, except that they can only be soaked by the opposite realm. The general strategy for this is, look at the other group, drop your seeds off to the right, and then the entire raid rotates counterclockwise to soak the opposite seeds. When the seeds drop, the entire raid should aim to soak them after about a half a second, giving the players that drop them time to get out. It is important for tanks to especially be on the ball here, so that Sire can get over into position in time and melee can continue to DPS while they soak. Another Mythic change is that 100 energy, Sire will use both Massacre and Ravage at the same time. Since Ravage can be baited, the boss needs to be centered, with all 20 players directly in a line between Sire and whatever mark you want to bait on. After the Sinister Reflection cast goes off, the entire raid should use movement speeds to get out of the Ravage. Range will swing out to the right, while melee will go through the boss. While most of the range can stop moving once they get out of Ravage, seeds will continue to go right until they clear everyone, ideally moving towards the boss to limit travel time for melee. After this set of seeds is the tank knock and the second blood price. This is probably one of the most dangerous points in the fight. Melee are generally soaking near an edge, so need to watch their positioning for the knock, and each raider should check their HP before the blood price. After this, the downstairs should Lust. There is one more set of seeds here, and the same general rules apply. Range seeds end up going more forward than right, while melee seeds go near a mark. After they are soaked, the range stand near that mark while the boss is pulled alongside them. This is done to bait the second Ravage, which we will need a gate for. There is a fair bit of downtime here, just use it to pump damage into Sire. This ends up being the most deadly part of the fight. You will likely have to use one or more battle reses here, and that's fine. Similar to the first bait, no one should move until the Sinister Reflection cast completes. Range will take the gateway and then basically remain stacked, only dodging backwards if needed. Melee will dodge in the same direction on foot, making sure to clear the Ravage and any massacres. The hard part is the tank knock, which happens during the massacre. Range may get knocked into the red barrier, and that's okay, just get out of it as soon as possible. The entire raid should be using immunities here, just to not get knocked. This includes using Blessing of Protection on targets that otherwise can't combat the knock. After soaking this set, the last blood price will happen. This is a good place to use any remaining health stones and tonics. The last set of seeds can be dropped in a similar fashion, with melee seeds going near the center of the room and range seeds going near the outside of the right. These seeds need to be soaked extremely fast. There is only a 4-second window before a tank knock occurs, and it needs to be pre-positioned for. After this, there's another set of seeds that is not soaked.
Let's fucking go, dude.
Pump,
Please,
pump, pump,
dude.
pump, pump,
Get
go!
the boss.
Yes!
Let's go.
Yes!
Yes, dude! Holy fuck!
Yes.
There it is, boys.